To day one of this lesson. The first part of the lesson is going to include a handful of vocabulary words. As always, pause the video so you have enough time to write down the vocabulary words, as we're not in class, so I can speed through that part just a little bit quicker. So pause in order to write them down. The first vocabulary word we discussed was a variable. What is a variable? It is a letter representing an unknown number. A variable could be any letter. Could be X, could be Y, could be A. Typically, right now, variables are always single by themselves. If you happen to see two variables next to each other like X, Y, that is representing two separate numbers with an operation of multiplication. So please know that this will not represent a single number. It would technically be two different numbers. A term. A term is a number or a variable that are separated by a sign or a symbol. Usually that sign or a symbol is the adding or a subtracting side. For example, a term might be 3x minus 5. I have two terms here. My first term is the 3x. The other term is separated with that minus sign, and it is minus 5. We will work further on clarifying the difference between these in the next few examples. Like terms. Like terms are terms that have similar variables. The variables have to have the same power. If I skip down to the non-example, 7x is different than 7x squared because the variables are not the same. It would be like comparing a Sharpie marker and a whiteboard marker. They have two different purposes, two different functions. I cannot have one Sharpie and one whiteboard marker and tell someone that I have two Sharpie markers. They're not the same. Just as if I had an x and an x squared, I could not tell someone that I had two x squareds or two x's because they're two separate things. The next few examples we have are coefficient and constant. A coefficient is very simply the number in front of a variable, and a constant is the term without a variable. When I look at these examples down below, I know that the coefficient is the number in front of the variable. In this example, my coefficient is just the 4. My constant are the numbers that have no variables. The 5 and the negative 7. Often people wonder and ask in class, is that a positive 7 or a negative 7? So I remind them to go back to when we were doing our integer work and we had to add the opposite, because if we added the opposite, that would give us our negative 7. So for your homework, you're going to need to be able to determine which numbers are constants. Remember, a constant is the number that does not have a variable tied to it. So when I look at this expression, again, an expression is terms put together without an equal sign. When I look at this expression, I see 4 terms. In class, we emphasize the point to group those terms with different shapes. So I'm going to group this 19 in a box, and then I'm also going to group the negative 1 in a box because those two go together. They don't have any common variables. I then am also going to group together the 3x, which happens to be negative, and the 7x, which happens to be negative. Then I'm going to look at my question. My original question says, what are the constants? I know that my constants are the numbers that do not have variables. So to answer this question, my constants are the 19 and the negative 1. They do not have variables. In this question, I need to label what are the coefficients. Remember, if we go back to our notes, the coefficient is the number in front of the variable. Here's my variable. The variable is the letter. So the number in front is the coefficient. So if I go back to this original example, I'm going to do the same thing I did on the last one. I'm going to start by grouping these. Negative 14 would be grouped together with a positive 6. Those would be grouped together because they do not have variables tied to them. I would then group together this -9 and the -35m because they both have m's. Now I know there are 4 terms. 1, 2, 3, 4, because the terms are separated by positive and negative signs. Then I'm going to look next and answer my question. What is the coefficient? Remember, the coefficient goes in front of the variable. So in this example, I have 2 coefficients, -9 and -35. I do not include the m. The m is the variable, remember. The coefficient is just the number. For your homework, you had to take an expression like this and separate out all the parts. Again, take the time and show all of your steps. I'm going to start by grouping my terms. There's a term. Here's another term. Here's another term. I skipped the -5 in the middle because I was trying to group all of my similar like terms together, all those that had an n first. Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to group together my other numbers. They don't have variables. When I look at this, I have 5 different shapes. That means I have 5 different terms. Those terms are 2n, -3n, -5, positive n. And remember, if I see it, there's 1 there. So if I can see it, it's like having a 1 in front of it. And then the +2. Which one of these are like terms? Well, the like terms are those that I put in similar shapes. So in this case, my like terms are 2n, -3n, and that n, again, which has a 1 invisible in front of it. I also then have like terms of -5 and 2. The most common mistake that kids make is they miss those negative signs. So please take time to circle the number and sign in front. Circle the number and sign in front. The next question says coefficient. Remember, the coefficient is the number in front of the variable. So in this case, my coefficient is 2, -3, and that invisible 1 that we have. My constants are those that do not have any kind of variable. So my constant is -5 and 2. One more example. I would like you to pause your screen, try this on your own, and then come back and see the answer. Welcome back. So now what I'm going to do is run through this rather quickly, hoping that you took time to sort out your problem. You may have chosen different shapes than I did, but that's okay. I am going to now list out my terms. My terms are those in the separate boxes that I have. Then I'm going to list out my like terms. My like terms are those that come in the similar boxes. Remember that one. And then I don't have any like terms to go with the 4, so I'm not even going to write it down. Then I have my coefficients. My coefficients are the numbers that were in front of the variable, and my constant is the -4. If you take the time and just refresh your memory going back and forth to your notes, you shouldn't have a problem. So in summary, the coefficient is the number in front of the variable. The constant is the number that has no variable. The terms are separated by the positive and negative signs, and take time to write the different shapes around all of those. Thank you very much for watching, and good luck on classifying your terms today.